Welcome back, you guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. If you've been a long-time subscriber, we really appreciate it. And if you're new and want to see some more glassblowing stuff, make sure you subscribe and turn on those notifications for more videos.
Absolutely. Welcome back, everyone. It's great to have you. And this week we have a very special guest, Blake, aka Glassblower on Instagram.
How's it going, guys? It's great to be here. I'm happy to be part of this here and back in the studio with Dustin.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I was hoping that you could maybe tell these people a little bit about yourself, maybe your experience with glass or something interesting in your life or whatever you want to share, you know?
Well, I was going through kind of a rough time in my life when I discovered glassblowing. I was recovering from a few injuries, and I actually stumbled across the YouTube videos, probably like in the very early stages of your whole thing here. And so I looked you up and noticed that you were just like right down the road from me. So I made a really good decision and signed up for some classes at Revere Glass. Just kind of remembering back on some of those moments, it was just such a special place to be. From the bottom of my heart, it really changed my whole life and opened the doors to all these opportunities. And along my journey in glassblowing, it's been probably 6 years now, I think, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
I've gotten to work with such amazing people and such great artists and talents from all over the country and the world, actually. And it's just been such a great opportunity to be a part of this community, and to be able to share this stuff with you guys and collaborate and, you know, do these great things. I've made great friends along the way, and I wouldn't change any of this for the world. So,
well, thanks, Blake. That really means a lot, and I'm so happy that you had a really good experience. And it was cool when Kevin and I were there at the really early stages and having you around the studio and different people coming by, and there's a whole big melting pot of culture and glassblowers. So yeah, thanks a lot for doing that, and we're honored to have you on the torch, man.
Stoked you're back in the bay.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
So I wanted to thank all you guys for signing up for the online school. It's amazing to see all you guys and all the new faces and the people. So I just want to let you guys know that the price for the online school is only $9 per month, or $49 to join the watch parties and have some personal interaction with me every week. And starting November 9th, there's a free class in the Facebook group that's going to be in conjunction with the online school. So make sure you join the Facebook group. If you want access to the videos, it's only $9 a month. There's some links on the bottom for you.
And already some great discussion going on in that Facebook group too.
Yeah.
Lots of people talking about their studio setups and different projects already that they're working on. So pretty sweet.
And some workshops too?
Yeah, absolutely. Coming up soon.
Yeah, so we have a few workshops coming up. There's a workshop from Alderson Glass on Filicellos, Gus Glass, Colton Hindle Jewelry. So make sure you check that out. If you'd like to be more in depth with a certain artist or technique, you can spend all day with them. It's pretty cool stuff.
8 hours. We get all the 3, 4, 5 cameras going.
Yep.
Got everybody mic'd up, and I'm watching chat to get questions and stuff. So it's a cool time to be able to hang out and kind of get to know their style of work.
Yeah, it's good to be able to be with an artist all day, somebody new. And the other great thing is the community. So thank you guys all for watching and being part of the community. And we, of course, want to thank Mountain Glass Arts.
Absolutely. We want to thank them, as always, for sponsoring the show. They're a great place to get tools, supplies, all kinds of colored tubing. They have, in fact, these great diamond shears and scissors that we're going to be giving away at the end of the video. So stick around for that.
Yeah, these were really cool. We used them in the video, and they're great shears, very affordable. So you can check those out at Mountain Glass. Everyone there is doing really good, and they plant a tree every time you make a purchase, and that's something that really means a lot to me, trying to be as green as possible and as small of a footprint as possible, especially when we're blowing glass. So definitely thank you, Mountain Glass Arts.
I've planted a lot of trees over the years with Mountain Glass.
What do you like about Mountain Glass?
They're so fast with getting orders out to you, and if there's any question or any sort of special request that you need in your order, they'll accommodate you the best they can. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've outfitted 90% of my studio off of mountain glass, just for convenience and just knowing that they give back to, you know, the planet, and they help other artists, and
and the customer service is top notch, like you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, we work with Mountain Glass for a reason. It's because we've all had great experiences for years with them, and we only took on the one sponsor because that's who we really trust. So thanks, Mountain Glass. I think we should get into the studio and make this piece for you guys.
Let's do it. We'll hop on in. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. All right, I think I'm gonna grab this little thing here and move it over.
Gotta start some music. You always gotta have some music playing in the studio.
Yeah, music's super important to me in the studio. It helps set the mood. One thing I did want to mention about really making anything that is going to be ingested or in your body, you got to make sure that you're very good with your craft, and you want to make sure that there's no broken glass or messed up seals or in a frit pipe loose glass. You really want to make sure that if you're making things like this, that you really have a solid grasp on your seals, your connections, annealing time, things like that.
Yeah, I think a piece of this nature would probably be best made by, I guess, intermediate to advanced glass blowers, because you just want to be 100% sure of all your seals and just, you know, really confident in your work on a piece like this, because, you know, there is an assumed responsibility and, you know, almost maybe a liability when you're making pieces like this that are intended for use in the way they are.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're just getting a little blank here ready.
Yep, just getting a solid blank together. I chose to go with 26 mil rod for this so that I didn't have to gather a big amount of glass, save some time, and then I'm using either 12 or 16 millimeter hollow tubing as my handles, just to save a little weight and keep this piece manageable as we add glass to it.
And you just condense down the end of that blow tube so that it's a solid section for a little bit more solid weld onto the chunk of glass.
Absolutely, just kind of just keep everything nice and hot and as solid as possible, because you don't want it to snap off of that hollow tubing.
So now you're just gonna take off the size that you need for the dot stack and kind of put the other side away.
Yeah, just put it off to the side. You don't need much glass to start, because when you're doing these dots, you're just kind of building on to each layer.
So you're just going to separate that in half, and you could totally set that aside, you know, as prep for another dot stack, condense it down later on.
Yeah, dot stack or a marble or whatever you want to use it for.
So where'd you learn how to do these dot stacks?
Geez, that's a good question, Dustin. It just, you know, hours and hours and hours of working in the back corner of Revere Glass.
And because there was no one really dot stacking at this level as far as I remember. So you must have taken something and then you developed it in some way. Like, what was that process like?
Well, a lot of the glass blowers that I'd followed on Instagram or, you know, any of these social media platforms, I'd see their dot stacks and was curious how they would get them done, and just felt like I just had to try. And so no one really taught me formally how to do this. This was a lot of trial and error. There'd be hours and hours of doing these dots, and then, you know, the piece breaks after 9 hours or something because I didn't keep it hot enough, and just kind of quietly walk away and leave the studio without saying goodbye, and everyone would kind of understand what happened and be like, oh, see you tomorrow, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's an interesting experience when you've worked on something for many hours and then in one move, in 1 second, it's just destroyed. You know, maybe even you can't ever use any part of it again, and you've spent so many hours. And it's just a very interesting concept and an interesting art form, because you can't really have redos sometimes with glass.
Yeah, it's very humbling in a sense. You kind of have to accept what happens.
So here you've just got some jet black, I believe, and just putting your first row of dots on, and these will be the first row of dots that you start layering colors on top of.
Yeah, in the first row, you just want to focus on keeping the dots straight and evenly spaced out. You can plan ahead if you'd like, but I just try to split the difference with the last 2 dots to make it look even before I go and melt it all in.
Right, you could do 2 dots opposite each other and then split the difference again, but then I feel like that's a little trickier to keep them all even all the way around, you know, not tilty.
Yeah, you just want to go around in a circle, and then these last 2 dots right here is where you just want to make sure the spacing between the one you did before and the very first one you did is even.
And once you have all those dots on there, you can put a little more heat in the glass and start to melt these in. You always want to keep that gather warm so you don't have any cracking problems like you mentioned.
So tell me a little bit about why you like the glasses that have shade 5 and also didymium, like the splits, as opposed to some clip-ons or 2 different shades. Like, how do you like using those glasses, the split lens?
Split lens.
I think
glasses.
people will be interested to hear that.
The split lens glasses are awesome. You see I'm wearing them a little low on my nose. I tend to look mostly through the didymium part, but you know, when you're like raging some of the darker colors like the jet black, you just kind of can tilt your head back a little bit. And also, I remember you called me out one time in the studio because I used to just wear shade 3s or shade 5s all day long. And anytime someone would walk in the studio, I would rock my head back and look underneath my glasses. And it was like I was always giving everyone a what's up, just nonstop, you know? It's like, oh, what's up, what's up, what's up?
Like, who's over there? And a lot of times I hear people sometimes will peer over their shades at their glass too often. A lot of times if you're wearing only dark glasses, right?
Yeah, so I kind of like to just be able to shift and look. You know, I also noticed that the shade 5s at the bottom of the lenses, they provide some good protection from like the candles of the torch versus the piece you're actually working on. So it eliminates that hot spot that you get after long periods of time.
So you're... Oh, go ahead, Dustin.
So you just put it on your next layer here, and you've melted in all of those original jet black dots. And now, what do you keep in mind when you're applying that second dot? You know, how much space are you going for? And like, you know, how about melting? Is there any tricks around that help you keep it so even?
Yeah, I try to just put it right in the center and make sure before I'm placing the dot that I have like a nice melted end of the rod where it's completely rounded out and there's no weird, you know, stray glass hanging off of it. And mostly you want to focus when you're doing this on the bottom half of the dots so that you keep that spacing even, almost as if it's like an outline, because you're going to be covering up most of the top half of the dot with your next row anyway.
You can see the kind of push-pull motion you do really helps you get that nice and centered and the spacing really even.
Yep, and don't be afraid to add more glass or pick a little glass off of there either. You know, I think having an even amount of glass in each dot helps it melt in a lot better. See, I'm picking away a little bit of extra glass there just to make sure that when the dots are melted in, they're the same size.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty important trick that you just mentioned there, going around and adjusting the size of the dots before you melt them in. And if you can see that one's bigger or smaller, you can add a little bit or subtract a little bit of glass. I think that's a key element to getting them even, I would imagine.
Yeah, because you won't really be able to tell until they're done if they're uneven or not.
So just melting these guys in, got the Mirage flame going. And, you know, this isn't a super quick melt in, right? You're taking your time, you know, not overheating it or anything.
Keeping it really far out of the flame.
Yeah, look how far he is from the candles, right? Like he's in a much cooler part of the flame.
Being real nice and soft to the glass. And you also want to keep your gather super round. You don't want to distort the shape at all.
Yep, you can use gravity to decide that factor too.
So what color you got here now?
I think that's Agua Azul or...
Yeah, it looks
I
like
believe
it.
so.
Yeah,
Okay,
Aqua
cool.
Azul from Glass Alchemy.
Just kind of working up the shade scale there. Started from dark black, and you're working up to lighter colors as you go.
Yeah, and I like to use these colors too because they tend to resist a lot of the abuse that's required to melt in all these layers of dots, because you get a little further up in this process and it tends to really test the limits of the colors, and you don't want to scuzz anything out or boil anything out in your earlier rows.
Right, since you'll be heating it a lot of times and pretty hot, especially at the end.
Definitely.
Just gonna go back in here and melt all those together, and looks like you have a paddle in your hand as well. Are you gonna start to kind of push these down?
Yeah, sometimes you can assist the position. You can kind of determine where you want them to melt in by just, shifting the glass a little. You just focus the heat on one dot and then push it in to where it looks even with the dot that's below it. That way it melts in nice and evenly.
Just working your way around there. And you can see how you're focusing that heat just on the one dot by kind of swinging your wrist and tilting the blank there.
Yep.
Just going back in for a nice big reheat and gonna melt these dots in. How many layers of dots do you typically do on a dot stack?
I usually do 3 layers per row. I think it looks good having essentially a background color or outline color, and then an initial layer, and then a highlight color that's above that.
Mm-hmm. And how long does all that take typically if you're gonna make a 1.5 inch marble, or like about the size of this thing? Like, what was your elapsed time to make all of this dot stack?
So I found my average time per row for 3 colors is around 25 minutes or so. So this piece, I'm assuming just from the math, I think I did 7 or 8 rows. It's about 2.5 hours, give or take.
Right, little break in there. Gotta prep up some glass every once in a while. But yeah, definitely not a super fast process. But then again, a lot of glass blowing is not.
Yeah, and it's I think it's just important for people to know that that when you go into glass, you get into the zone, and that you really sometimes have this sense of lost time, and you really get into the flow, and it's super beautiful to watch. And we do kind of speed it up a little bit in the videos for you sometimes.
Right, yeah, definitely cutting out some of the more repetitive parts towards the end. But I want to show you guys the whole bevy of the process. So you're just putting in another row of dots here.
Yeah, I like to put an offset row as my second row so that they kind of stack on more like scales or half moons or something.
Totally.
Something along those lines.
And that's jet black again. You're just going to repeat the colors every time?
Yep, same color pattern on each row. You can go and experiment with different options when you're doing these color patterns. You don't have to do it repetitive like this, but I just tend to like it clean.
While you melt those in, it looks like I just wandered off, possibly to grab a refill from the kitchen.
Definitely got to stay hydrated when you're doing these.
Oh yeah. So you're just once again using that little graphite shaping tool there to push a couple of the dots around that you wanted a little more on center there.
Just melting them back in again, really nice and cool flame, making sure that the colors don't boil. These are particularly robust, easy to use colors, so it's really good for people just starting out. If you want to try this technique, the color choices that we used here is really good for when you're just first learning how to use the flame and making sure colors don't boil or liver or weird stuff like that.
And also I'd imagine the soft flame helps from imploding at all, and helps from moving the clear around too much.
Yeah, definitely. I think the slower you go in this process, the more even everything will turn out in the end.
You can see how nice and even that row of dots is there. Since your first row was nice and even around, your second row is going to be just the same.
Yeah, and if the first row you find is a little wonky, you can usually kind of correct it as you go, and everything will fall into place.
Right, by the time you hit the termination, you can get it nice and even. So just working your way around with your second color there.
Yep, little push-pull, and got those all stacked on there. Now I'm just going to go ahead and start melting those in.
And so couple more rows and we're gonna coat this whole thing so it'll look like a scale or dragon, kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, dragon scales, fish scales.
And I just love the way the dots kind of look as they melt in there, almost like flower petals, kind of, you know, closing in. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, they're kind of mesmerizing, which is another reason why you can't really tell how long it takes when you're doing it. You just kind of zen out in this flow state.
So Dustin is prepping up essentially a solid back stack to make some cane there to match this.
Yeah, so I know that I've showed you guys a few times how to make the vac stack videos, but we were thinking of a good design, and we decided to do dichroic cane, like a dichroic Zanfirico basically. And so I'm just stacking in dichroic glass and some of the colors that match this piece.
Blake's finishing up the last color there, the aqua, on the second row. And then you'll get back to melting that in. It's very cool how the end of the glass has become very reflective from the color on the inside, the black on the inside, kind of helping it reflect the image on the end.
Yeah, I think that probably Rose Rhodes is doing this and then layering more on top of it to make them layered in multiple levels like that.
I would guess that's for the tactic, right? You do essentially a full dot stack and then another one on the top of it, almost.
Yeah, I would think so.
With different sizes, and we're talking about Rose Rhodes, a really, really good glass blower. I'll link his Instagram down below.
Yeah, amazing glass blower, but he's super good at this technique.
Yeah, with this technique, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can stack these as long as you want. You can do as many rows as you feel like doing.
There you can see Dustin's prep. Got some color, got some dichroic sticks going on top there. And Blake has moved on to the third row with some more jet black.
And there's the colors that I'm using. It's basically matching what Blake's using, and then I'm putting in a layer of the dichroic facing towards the color.
And then you just filled the whole bottom area with clear rods, so that'll vac down into solid clear.
Yeah, and I'm cutting down dichroic strips to fit in there, and then I'll put above the dichroic another bunch of clear glass, and then vacuum that all down into a huge solid cane.
Melting these dots in here. You can see that pattern starting to come together towards the termination. Very nice.
And now you're working on your next color here.
I think I got lost at this point, but it was easy to find my way back into it once the piece cooled down a little and I could determine that was jet black that I had just put down there.
You weren't sure if you'd put a second color down yet, because
Yeah.
when it's super hot like that, they all start to look kind of the same.
Yeah, and you get in this repetition where you're like, oh wait, where am I? Hold on a second.
Right, you gotta put your rods on one side of the torch or the other side every time you use one, right?
So I noticed that when you're applying these dots that you're actually not applying them straight. You're applying them and then pushing towards where the termination will be. So you're shaping like more of a teardrop. Is that on purpose, or?
I use that to kind of correct myself a little bit when I notice that I'm putting too much glass down at one point.
Yep.
Because you don't want the color to touch the last dot that you put down. So if you find maybe the rod is a little too hot and the dot is getting wider than you anticipated, you can just kind of swipe up towards the termination to keep the width of it down.
And that'll be hidden under the next row anyway.
Yep.
So it's starting to look really good. Really good.
And starting to get heavier, of course, putting more glass on there. Although you were mentioning this, it's not all that much color for this whole dot stack.
Yeah, the thing that I like about this technique is it's actually very color conservative, color conscious. I think through this whole section, I used a half of a length of rod of each color, and you have this massive section, that's basically all color, and you're not really using that much glass.
Have you done this technique on tubing as well, or do you mostly do it on solid rod for marbles?
I actually originally only did it on tubing and kept it hollow. It adds a little bit more of a variable factor as far as, puffing into the section to keep the wall thickness even throughout it, or using it to stretch the colors out. But for this solid work, it tends to be a little quicker because it's just kind of dot down an even amount of glass and then just rage it and melt it in.
So Dustin's got his Bunsen's going on the lathe there. Get that heated up.
Yeah, so basically making a vac stack here, and I have in a 75 by 5 tubing many clear rods, and then sandwiched in the center is dichroic colored rods and stringers.
And you could see me looking over there to kind of take a peek at what was going on while I'm just, doing this repetitive motion here, building this dot stack.
Want to see what's up on the lathe. Always cool watching that go down.
Yeah, I think it's always cool to see what other people are making and how everyone's techniques differ from each other, because that's how we learn as a community and grow as a community, is we're really inspired by the people who we see working next to us and how good they're getting at something, and they see what we're doing and kind of build techniques off of that.
That being said, it's always a pleasure to be invited to someone else's studio to work together on a piece, because you get to feed off each other, and you always get to see who's doing what and what techniques people are using and how they're pushing themselves and pushing each other.
I'm just heating this up and paddling it in. You can do this on a much smaller scale too. You could have 50 by 5 be the outer, or even 38, something like that. Totally work, and you could make cane this way.
Just use smaller pieces of rod for the clear, and you could probably fit similar cup size color, maybe pull down stringers if you had to.
Yeah, and you could also, instead of having like the strips of dichroic, if you measure your dichroic to just fit in, you could just measure a sheet to put in there also. But mine was already cut into strips.
So pulling off the end there, closing it up so you have a nice airtight section, and that way you'll be able to vac that down and make it into one solid piece of glass.
Yep.
And of course, Blake, you're still dotting away over here.
Dotting away. Can't stop.
Can't stop. Must dot.
You can see you're almost done with the, what is that, second to last, third to last row perhaps? Getting closer.
Yeah, getting closer.
It's a meditation, right? It's like you go in there and listen to some music and work in, 1 by 1 by 1 inch space.
Yeah,
for a couple hours.
It's done when it tells you it's done.
Just heating this up, and then I'm going to start to evacuate the air. Pull that out, and then it's going to get condensed into a big solid rod. There's definitely some extra here that we could use for other projects as well, but I thought making cane on this scale would be an interesting thing for you guys to see.
And nice and efficient too, rather than having to make more later on, you just got an extra chunk to use later.
Yeah.
So really raging that good old Delta hand torch.
I love that hand torch.
This thing's a monster.
That thing is awesome.
You can see me burn the back a little bit there.
It's okay. That's what that's there for.
That's what it's there for.
Keep the wall safe.
Yeah.
And you always want to have something like that when you're raging a torch close to a wall. Hardy backer, a backer board like that, because you don't want to burn the studio down.
Yep.
So you got a big old piece of solid rod. That might even be 24 mil or something like that.
Yeah, it's 15 maybe, something like that. Big piece of solid rod, and then heating this up and evacuating the air. You can see it kind of starting to come out and turn a little bit.
The lines in between the clear rods disappear as you go there, and you can really see that color and the dichro start to pop out in the middle. And it's nice the dichro is so deep in there, so it's not nearly as much danger of burning it out.
How's that new camera?
Ooh, it's so nice. Got a new Fujifilm X-T4 and loving it. 4K 60. You guys saw the wide angle on it on the intro. Old Canon finally can retire.
Oh man, I don't know if we can get Canon completely out of our lives.
That's true. These shots here are all shot on Canons.
Yeah, we typically, for those of you guys who are curious, all the On the Torch stuff has typically been shot with Canon cameras, almost everything.
The XF series, the fixed lens, and then some on the DSLRs.
Yep. So just heating this up and getting that twist kind of started to go, and then I'll be able to take it to the torch and really refine how big I want to make it.
So are you slowing down one side of the lathe to create this twist?
Well, actually, the tailstock was a little bit loose, and so it slipped for a second, and that's why we got those spirals in there. So there's like a little locking mechanism on the chucks, and sometimes it loosens. You know, chucks wear over time.
Right. And on the lathe, the tailstock and the headstock are mechanically connected, right? So they're always spinning the same rate.
Yeah, they should be always spinning the same rate.
So while you finish pulling that guy down there, Blake's melting in some more dots.
Just melting them in.
Using that Delta hand torch, and this is like a great way to make marbles or just stock in general. And take that off.
Do a little flame cut.
Because I really only need about that much glass for this piece that I'm gonna make. Going in with some blue, really tealy maybe this layer. Because you used aqua azul, really tealy, jet black, and what was the other one?
That was it.
That was it?
Yep. You potentially were going to use some Star White, but you ended up forgoing it.
Yeah, I was going to add Star White as the termination, but I just felt like it looked clean as it is, so just...
What am I doing over on that other torch? You remember why I went over to that torch,
You had to pull it down by hand. You were pulling down that big old piece, so you hooked up another handle to the section you took off the lathe.
Oh, right, and that's... Because, there's a Mirage next to me, and then that torch is a Samurai, so a bit bigger flame.
When the second stage isn't hooked up on the Mirage.
The foot pedal.
It was a little troublesome to try and pull that down on the Lynx.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, on the Samurai.
So I'll grab a couple of shots of that with the XT4 in a minute here. Yeah. But Blake's just going in on more dots.
So beautiful.
I love the way that section has come together. I
mean, you could totally do shades of green and make a beautiful dragon scale situation. Or fish or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like a fish right now.
Yeah. You'll flatten that out with a masher and make that into a fish, huh?
Yeah, I haven't tried that, but that would be pretty interesting and pretty fun to do. I think it would look great.
There's another guy who does dot stacking on tubing who's coming in for a workshop. It's WYG_glass on Instagram. And he'll be in the studio for 8 hours, live streaming, multiple camera angles. If you guys are interested in the dot stacking technique and kind of getting a little bit of one-on-one time with somebody who's doing excellent work with it, you're welcome to sign up for that video, that online class.
Totally. And that's coming up next year, correct?
Yeah, I think the first part next year.
Yeah, you might see me signing up for that class.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it's really like Gus Glass is coming over too for a workshop, and he's so good at wigwags. But I'm definitely interested in learning from him, like how's he doing his wigwags? Because even though I like to do wigwags, he's got a trick, I've got a trick. Everybody's gonna be like, oh, that's a good idea.
It's so cool, you've been doing something like, for years and years, and you still can find out new things about it all the time, new tricks.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend of mine this morning, and he's a teacher as well, and I asked him, does he work on his own stuff, or just teaching is all he's doing to progress? And he's like, no, I gotta hone my craft, and I work on my own stuff 2 hours a day.
Nice. So you can see you've got that pulled down there. You're putting some heat in with that Samurai and just pulling that down to a more even section.
Yeah, just melting that in, right, Blake?
Yeah, it must be getting close to the end here. It seems like it's never ending, but that's the cool thing about these dot stacks is you can keep going as long as you want, or as long as the other person you're working with is working on something of their own. There's always time to squeeze another row in there, You're
going in with that second color there, and your dots have almost gotten a little bit smaller as you're going here. You're getting closer to the termination.
Yeah, you just fit in as much glass as the space will allow is basically what's going on here.
And Dustin's got that section pulled down. He's gonna just snip off the other blow tube with his nippers so it will fit in the kiln.
Yeah, and I'll get that ready, and I'll get it finally shaped in its finalized way, and then we can use it.
Be ready to connect up for the body of the piece. So you're going in here, just melting that in, and you see almost a corner kind of form in there, and you just let that come back into a round shape before you put your dots on.
Yep, I think at this point I'm rounding that proverbial corner, you could say, and trying to bring this section to a termination.
And you're just going to put a final row of dots for that, and then you'll pull the glass out to bring them all into a nice point. And there's different styles of terminations you could do, but you can do like a spirally.
Yeah, you can do a spiral or a fine point or a solid dot in the center or add an opal to it. You know, whatever you feel like you want to do at this point. Just have fun with it.
I love the way it looks before you pull the termination out. You have all those little dots peeking out in the middle.
Yeah, I was just wondering, have you ever saved that part of it in some way other than a termination to try to kind of capture that look right there on the front?
The only thing I've done is I've done dot stacks like that on glass that I've used frit on before, so it has like an extra dimension of color. And then I'll just place an opal right in that center section there, so you can still kind of see the dimension of everything.
What
and
about
the layering?
What if you put an opal right in the center there, and then clear over that? That would be a beautiful point of a marble. You guys might want to try that.
Little
Yeah,
lensing
definitely.
effect.
Yeah, try that out and post it up and tag us in it. I think the hashtag is Revere Glass School.
Yep.
That'd be awesome. We'd love to see it.
We'd love to see what you guys get to do with this dot stack. Super, it's like an amazingly, like you need very, very low skill to like start doing this. Like obviously Blake's been doing it for years and he's built a lot of skill with this and other glass, but putting a dot onto solid clear glass is one of the very first things that any glassblower will do.
So you got a nice termination pulled out there now. Just pulled it very centered and just gonna go on a very soft flame, you know. Don't want to crack it now.
Yeah, you don't want to boil out this termination since the glass is so thin at the end. You just kind of want to let it slowly condense back down into the rest of the piece.
Just letting gravity do all the work here.
Turning up the oxygen a little bit there once it's in a little bit more. And then kind of letting that fall into place and just back right into there.
Making sure to not let it fall off center or anything.
So it's almost all the way melted in, and this takes a little while. This probably took about, I don't know, 5 minutes maybe to get it all the way in like that, but you just got to be patient and it'll slowly collapse. And it's the same thing with wigwags or any sort of terminations. You got to kind of approach that a little slower.
But you can really see how nice and even the pattern came out there. Very nice.
I think we're joking at how long it took right there.
I was like, man, Blake, you're really going in on
now
it there.
let's see if this looks good.
Final inspection.
Beautiful. Such a good job, Blake.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll pop that guy in the kiln once it cools enough. You know, take a little, I think we did a little dinner break here.
Yeah,
Broke
and
it up.
it's important to remember, like, what he's doing here is keeping it out of the kiln for a second when you're working with something so thick, is that you actually kind of have to wait till it stops glowing a little bit to put it in the kiln. Otherwise it'll deform in the kiln because that radiant heat really stays with that for a long time.
Slip that guy in there. Oh, very nice. Now we can go eat some Indian food.
Nice.
That was good.
Yeah.
Back on the torch. So you got your dot stack back out of the kiln here. Gonna get it ready to attach up to the rest of the section.
So I'm going to switch sides now so that we can use the termination as the very top of this piece, and I'm going to get it ready to attach to the large piece of cane that Dustin made.
Still getting used to those real touchy knobs on Dustin's GTT there. They're real worn in.
Mm-hmm. She's well broken in, and I appreciate that about the torch.
Well, it's also, there's actually a way to adjust the tension on the GTT. You can, the knobs come apart and you can actually adjust the tension. I like to run mine like on a hair. Like
Yeah, I noticed that yours were like a kind of a hair adjustment, very light touch, and the flame just completely takes a mind of its own, you know.
Well,
It's all about the fine touch.
Yeah, you get, you know, just like how I brought my own tools, you get used to your own setup, and you know, so when you're a guest in someone else's studio, there's a little bit of adjustment you have to make when you're working on someone else's equipment. But it's fine.
Yeah. I think there's some information on GTT's website for those of you guys who run those torches, and they'll tell you how to tension your knobs to whatever you want.
So you're gonna take a little bit of that, clear off the other end, and just prep that up to connect to the other section.
Heating that up, melting it in, getting it ready. This is going to be a really big straight seal. So it's about 25, 30 millimeters, something like that.
At least, yeah. It's definitely a solid size piece of glass here, and it's pretty big and heavy on this end, and very big and heavy for the whole body of the piece.
And that's just clear. So right now that he's got the clear there, you can have a peek inside of the back of all those dots. All right, here we go.
Got that guy out of the kiln, and so you did let those dots sit in the kiln for another 10 minutes or so before you went in for the seal. So I love the way that twisty cane came out.
Thanks. Yeah, so that's completed there. I just spiraled it up as I took it out of the lathe. I just finished that spiral by hand and then shaped it.
So you're just going to prep the top here so that it looks nice and is ready for a connection.
Yep, going and taking a look and making sure that the sizing is proper on each side. And I think at this point, the true nature of a collab here, I went ahead and passed it off to Dustin.
Tapped out.
I definitely tapped out. No shame in that. I definitely tapped out.
It's a heavy. Honestly, guys, solid rod this big is a heavy thing, and he had already been holding his hands up for 2 hours. I'm sure
if you were gonna,
he just went in straight, definitely could make this seal.
Right, if you're gonna assemble something like this yourself, you might take a break for an hour or two and come back to it. But we were like, all right, let's finish filming. Time to go.
So I'm just heating them both up, and then connecting them really nice and easy, nice and paying attention to getting them both hot. And I really like the way that there's like a gap of clear glass above where the cane started, and the cane kind of spiraled into a flat disc under it.
It's a very nice transition there, and you're just going to work that transition area so that the piece flows nicely, right? You don't want any weird bumps, any weird areas on this one. So
I'm just going back and forth, letting the glass flow to make that a really nice even connection. I'll go in there with some more heat, make sure it's all melted to the same diameter, that there's no like little marks or holes or anything left in there.
Pushing, pulling a little bit.
Yeah, I'm making just a small Maria here in between these two sections. And then once I have that, I'm going to take off my punty here and then just shape the top of this piece a little bit.
As usual, pulled that off a little bit away from the dot stack so you could pull the clear out slowly, get a nice termination again.
Yep, I think the termination came out all right on this piece. It's so beautiful, all those dots, but Blake, I think, did a really good termination. I couldn't keep it because the blow tube was on there.
Right. Yeah. But having it centered beforehand helps a lot.
Yeah, I just had to do a final little touch on it because it was already set up.
Yeah, you don't want to spend, especially with a piece this large, you don't want to spend too much time just working on, a super fine detail on one end, because the other end is completely not heated up right now, and you don't want to stress the glass too much.
And it doesn't, you don't want to make a perfect termination since you have to punty back up to finish the base of it anyway, too.
Yeah, and like Blake's saying, this is dichroic glass cooling down. It's sandwiched. It could crack, so we got to be careful about how long we keep it in the kiln, in the torch, out of the kiln, all that stuff. We're really paying attention and doing each step properly. So instead of going in to make the base of it now, I'm going to put it back in the kiln for 10 minutes, make sure that it's ready, and then shape the base.
And that's why you left even more of the rod than you normally would. So you're really making sure not to shock the base of it with any heat, since it was pretty cool.
So I'm just heating it up and take that rod off. Make sure there's no clear glass left, and then I'll heat this up to a big gather, and I'll be able to create a base for this.
Pulling off any bit of clear there. It's funny, you had Blake's tweezers for a second there. You were like, "What? These
Yes,
feel weird. What's going on?"
Switching back to your own tweezers. That's
They feel so good.
a little bit of tension. You know exactly how much you need to pull, right?
Like I said, when you get used to your own tools, it's a little bit of an adjustment when you come into someone else's shop. So
Why don't you guys let us know in the comments what's the one tool that you have that you've modified for yourself, or that you use somebody else's and you're like, man, this doesn't work like mine.
So you're just heating that gather up there, condensing it back using gravity to get a little bit of a bulbous end there, and then you'll flatten it on your marber.
Just gonna hold it up, slowly push it down, making sure not to really get a really big indent. I'm trying to keep it kind of a diagonal edge so that the main center of the piece is not pushed into the gather.
Right, it flows nicely into the base rather than having a sharp corner down there.
So you're probably using more of the weight of the piece to flatten it than actually pushing down towards
Yeah, as it gets colder, I start to push a little bit more, but initially I'm even holding the weight of the piece for it, and then slowly adding more weight, more pressure.
And then letting it condense back like that helps that nice transition too. And now we weren't sure if it would stand up, especially after the curve, but turns out it did.
It does stand up, but yeah, you guys can see it here in a second. Kevin took some nice shots of it, but yeah, it ended up standing up even with the curve.
Which you're going to put in now here. You got a real nice bushy flame and just very softly heating the body of it there.
And I'm really just going to use its own weight, like I would with a Sherlock, just really heat it up to the point where it just starts to move, and then I'm going to let its own weight just kind of bend that a little bit.
Gravity doing the work for you.
Just heating it up, making sure that I have enough of an area hot, so I need like a couple inches, 3 inches maybe hot, so that the curve is a nice sloping curve and not too dramatic.
Right, very gradual, even letting it come back uncurved a little bit there. Very nice, subtle.
So now I'm just gonna let that kind of cool off for a little bit, take out any of the lines from bending it.
Sometimes you get a little bit of surface stress there if a little piece of the surface moved a little bit too much for its heat level.
Grab it with the Griffin holders, and we're going to detach the punny and pop that thing in the kiln.
Going into the tip there, you'll take that punny off, and this is where you want to make a nice termination, but of course you don't want to spend too long on it either. And
this is like a hard because it's not in alignment, so I have to really go in there and hope that the termination is pretty much left the way that I left it, and just pick off the clear very carefully.
Staying centered as you do. And then you'll just have just one little bit of determination to pull out.
Yeah. So just applying some heat, trying to get that clear melted, and pulling off the clear with another clear rod. You could use tweezers or anything, but you can see I got to the color, but there's a little bit of clear left, so probably go in and pull that out one more time.
Switch to a 7mm punty there, a little bit more control than the handle you had on there.
Alright, so now that it's all out, I'm just going to melt everything in.
Make sure it's nice and smooth there, nice rounded and even tip, symmetrical from all sides. That's really nice to be able to pull your torch out there.
Yeah.
So you can get your tongs down.
Alright, we'll throw that in the kiln. There it is.
Very cool. I love the way that came out, guys. Great collab.
Yeah, thanks for working with us, Blake. It was really a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me over to do this. It was a great time.
So you'll pop that in the kiln for an annealing cycle, and you guys can see that piece right there in all its glory.
You can see the nice Zenfirico cane with the dichroic and the different colors, matching the beautiful dot stack that Blake did.
And the way the cane kind of comes to a disc below the dots there, very nice.
Yeah, the whole piece flows together really well. I like the contrast between the cane and the dot stack.
A little bit of extra color in the cane there's a nice addition to it, and the sparkle on one side as well.
And remember, this is for one of you guys. Just comment on the video and we will send this away to one of you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome back, you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned a tip or a trick, maybe something you can use in your own work. It was super fun making this, and as I've said before, as a glassblower, I'm going to make objects for intoxication or pleasure. So if you'd like this, please comment on the video and it'll be yours.
Absolutely, it's cool watching you guys work on that thing together. I'd never seen that solid wigwag tech in person. And of course the dot stack Blake, very nice. So be going out to one of you guys. I got some questions for you guys now. First one up here from It's Just Pictures of My Dog. What extra things should someone have in mind when they are trying to set up an outdoor studio?
The wind.
Yeah, right. The wind and the light, I think, are the two big things you have to consider.
With lighting, you want to probably, if you're doing outdoor, you want to set yourself up in like a shady place so you can at least see like your flame, the candles on your torch. You're not getting like weird glare off the glass or in your glasses or anything like that. Also lighting in any studio, indoor or outdoor, is crucial to be able to work for like a longer period of time. Having just the right light setting to avoid strain on your eyes and to just kind of keep you pushing forward in this medium.
Yeah, and for the wind, you could put up some barriers on either side of your station, either in plexiglass or hardy back or something like that, even in the front. If you guys want to reference the video that we did called Beyond the Torch, episode 2, Burning Man,
Nice.
there is a totally good shots of the hobo blow, which is my portable glass blowing studio.
So great, and that one does have a little plexiglass thing you set up around it, both to keep people from getting too close, sticking their face in the flame, never be good, and also protect from the wind a little bit.
Yeah, but it's totally possible. Safety first. Make sure you have your fire extinguisher, your lines are connected, you got your soapy water. Definitely possible to do. Got to be careful with dropping hot glass, but yeah.
Very cool. Next up here from Lee Spence, how do you pick colors for a piece? I know we kind of picked the colors for this one together, just kind of went and looked at the stock.
Should I go first?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I think with picking colors for your work, as an artist, over time you'll probably end up deciding on your preferred colors, what is appealing to you and what you like to work with, and how you want to portray your work in color. I know there's some people that are a lot more informed in color theory and things like that, but honestly, I think making your work for you and picking colors that you are visually drawn to is probably the easiest way to pick color for glass, and don't be afraid to experiment and expand on the palette that you decide to use. I mean, sometimes I'll dot a couple colors on just to even see how they look together, especially once doing dot stacks. Once you start layering colors, sometimes they change the way they look a little bit, or one color looks better on another, or just right next to each other. But you just have to play around and decide what you like specifically, I think.
Totally, yeah. Well, I like to use a lot of intuition when I choose color, kind of like what Blake was saying. I really just go back to my color rack and pull out colors that I think will work well together, and pull some backstack tubing or something, but generally just make the colors that I want to see. And but yeah.
Yeah, so you definitely have a couple color palettes you tend towards, like the one you used for the backstack. It's a pretty common color palette you've used over the years. Not common, but it's one of your go-tos.
One of my go-tos, pastel-y blues and purples, grays and things like that. And everybody finds kind of their palette that they like. So just experiment, especially in the early stages. Just try different things and you can build on any of that stuff.
Speaking of the early stages, John Briss would like to know, what are the coolest colors that are easy to work with for beginners?
Well, I think that these blues that we use from Glass Alchemy, that whole range of blues are very easy to work with, and I think they look great. Then there's colors like caramel, amber purple, those germanium and boron-based colors. Those ones are very easy to use. Ruby. Some of the ones that are harder to use are going to be the bright red, orange, and yellow colors, like crayon colors and lavas and canaries. They've gotten much easier over the years, but some of those are hard, and some of the ones like that have a lot of air in them, like Illuminati tends to bubble. Yeah, be careful with that one.
Or anything with a lot of metal. A lot of the greens can be a little tricky, a little harder on the seals, things like that.
Yeah, the steel wools, the ones with mica in it, things like that.
Yep, a lot more heat needed, things like that.
And it's a lot of stiffer of a color too, those.
But one thing about the color, which is awesome, on the online school, I just started reviewing all the colors. So I have a 5 to 7 minute video of some of the colors starting this last week. I put a couple up, so you guys can sign on to the online school. It's only $9 a month, and then you can see the different colors being used, and you'll know at least my opinion, and then I copy what Mike Shelbo wrote, who's done a lot of the colors for Glass Alchemy, in the description. So there you get a little bit more information, or post on the Facebook group if you have specific questions. There's a lot of people out there to help.
Very nice. Very cool.
And just one more thing on the subject of the online school and just education in general. I think it's incredibly important to pursue some form of education in this medium, especially if it's something that you want to push yourself in and you know that you're passionate about it and you want to pursue it. There's no putting a price on your education in this, and it can't hurt to learn different techniques from different artists and go and take a class here or do an online class there. It's only going to help build your knowledge base and build your comfort behind the torch. And to me personally, it totally just opens your eyes to what is actually possible in this medium and how far you can push yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks, Blake. I appreciate that, and I think you're absolutely right. Study with as many people as you can. Take what you want from each of the people that you learn from, and then you'll be able to build your own set of techniques that works for you and be able to share that with people that you care about in the community, and it keeps progressing. We all get better. We all teach each other, and totally, yeah. And that's why we're here. So thank you guys for watching with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so happy to have been a part of this video.
Cool.
Heck yeah. I think we got to give some things away here.
Let's do it.
More than just the bubbler this week.
Awesome.
So we'll start with that.
All right, let's start with the bubbler.
Bubbler is going to Matthew Jones.
Thank you, Matthew.
So much.
Yep. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting.
Hope you enjoyed that, bubbler. And next up, we got the shears, the straight shears. They're going to CJ Reich. Thank you so much, CJ. Great comment. Thank you so much.
Yep.
And finally, the diamond shears to Okie Dokie. So everybody just shoot me a message on Instagram. I'll get those packaged up and get those guys sent out to you.
Cool. And when you make this demo, make sure you hashtag on Instagram, Revere Glass School. Kevin and I always see that. We follow that tag. You guys should follow that tag as well if you'd like. Blake's Instagram is right there in the comments. Make sure you follow him as well as Kevin's.
Absolutely. Instagram tags are all down in the description at Glassblower, What's a Foot, and Revere Glass.
Cool. Thank you guys so much for watching this week. Thank you, Blake, for being here with us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye, guys.